This is the Millennials in Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. We interview industry experts to unlock key information that will help young professionals break into the multifamily world in order to create long-term and short-term wealth. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and written review so we can reach more listeners.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials in Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, John Stober, with my co-host, Fritz Ritter. And today we have Gino Barbaro, co-founder of Rand Partners, to talk about how he went from the restaurant business to acquiring his first 1,000 units without doing a syndication. Since making his first acquisition in 2011, Gino, along with his partner Jake Stenziano, have built a vertically integrated real estate investment company that includes in-house property management, the Jake and Gino coaching program, a brokerage arm, and a lending arm. Gino Barbaro, it is a pleasure to have you on the Millennials and Multifamily podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Could you just go a little bit more into your background and talk about how you went from restaurant business owner to multifamily real estate investor?
John and Fritz, thanks for having me on. And John, you nailed the last name without even practicing. I'm impressed, bro. I love that. It's really ironic for me right now, sitting here during this pandemonium, this panic that we're having right now. And it's very similar to my journey. Back in 2008, most people probably faintly remember the Great Recession, right? It felt like it was a generation ago, and it was only 12 years ago. And we've been fortunate for the last 10 years, the decade of 2010 to 20, there was no recession. And I think that's the first time in history that there wasn't a recession or a correction, right? And everyone's been telling you we're in the 7th inning, but we don't know if we're going into extra innings. So for me, back in 2008, I felt like the world was ending. I mean, I had 4 kids at the time. I have 6 kids now. I had a small little restaurant. Everybody gets affected when a pandemonium or panic attacks. First, it starts with construction. Then people start laying off. Then people don't start coming into the restaurant and eating. And I was panicking. I had some money in some deals that weren't going good because I got into real estate just like everybody else. It's great. It's passive income. But I didn't know what I was doing. It's education times action equals results. And I was taking massive action. I just didn't know what I was educating. I didn't know what I was buying, right? Mm-hmm. I got into a mobile home park, and if I had that deal now, it would be nirvana. But I didn't know what I was doing. I had a terrible sponsor. I didn't know how to underwrite the deal, and I crapped out on that deal. Then I went and bought something in New York. It was a mixed-use property right before the crash in November of 2006. I ended up buying it, but 12 months later, everything started, on the tail end. And, I always say it wasn't the deals. It was more me not knowing the deals, not knowing the due diligence, not knowing all the steps, and not being properly educated. And at 2008, I had it. I said, I've got to do something else. So I started going out and getting coached by different mentors, spent a lot of money on my education. I should say I invested my money in the education because I always have that, right? And fast forward, I met Jake in 2009. He was a drug rep in our restaurant, taking catering orders out. So same thing with him. He was having this shift in his life where things were costing more. The quality of living up in New York was getting worse. And he's like, I'm out of here. So in 2011, he's sitting in my restaurant and he's like, dude, I'm moving down to Knoxville. And guys, I didn't know where the hell Knoxville was. So I'm like, where's Knoxville? And he's like, Tennessee. So I whip open my computer, jump on LoopNet, and I'm like, wow, these look like some pretty good deals down there. I mean, the per door cost was low. The cap rates were high. I'm like, when you get down there, Jake, settle down there and let's start looking for deals. And he didn't know anything about real estate. He just knew he wanted to get into multifamily. So he gets down there in 2011. And it took us, John and Fritz, about 18 months to find the first deal. It wasn't easy because, Barbaro and Stenziano in East Tennessee, back then, 10 years ago, it's not the easiest thing in the world. You got guys saying, y'all ain't doing business down here. And it was just different back then. And it's very similar to what's going on right now. Over the last couple of years, I'm sure you've all heard people saying, there are no deals out there. There are no deals. But what is there? There is money. So back then, there was money, there was deals, but no money. And now let's flip the script. It's happened, same thing now. Now there's a lot of deals out there, but there's no money. Fannie and Freddie are tightening up. Investors are scared. So I want to leave the story off with this. Everyone out there, when you're going to get into multifamily or whatever investment or endeavor you're going to get to, the only time that it's right is when it's right for you. For me, it was right back in 2008 because I just knew I needed something different. Life coaching gave me a little clarity on why I wanted to get into it. Right now, my students have been listening to me, I've been telling them to get into it for the last 2 years, to get their relationships, to start building up their investor database, to start building broker relationships, to start learning what a cap rate is. If you're going to jump into it now and you don't know any of that stuff, you've got a 6-month window at least to go on to it. I'm not saying it's not the right time now, but if you've done it before, so my bottom line is, if you're ready to do something, do it now. Whenever you're ready, that's the time to start. Does that make sense, guys?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like that's the path we've actually been on for the past 18 months, and it feels great to have that level of preparation as the tides start to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask, though, because you've done some mobile home parks, you had done some mixed-use property, what led you to multifamily?
For me, I learned early on, probably like most of your listeners, I'm a shiny object guy. I love the shiny object. I'm looking at crypto right now. I'm looking at Ripple. I like looking at stocks. But for me, when I focused on one specific niche, I was, working a lot of hours, about 55, 60 hours a week. I didn't want to fix and flip homes. I mean, it looks great. And I love residential. I love looking at a house, fixing it up, turning something that was crappy into something beautiful. There's something tangible about that. I'm a hard worker in the restaurant. The great thing about that is you work during the day, you create dishes, you satisfy people, you get that dopamine hit. And it's sort of the same thing with residential. You get something done, it's a shorter time frame, and you enjoy it. Multifamily is a longer game. You have to be in it for a while to start seeing those benefits. And for me, I got into it because I didn't want to have another job. I wanted multifamily because I thought it was passive income, and it can be passive, right? But for me, I was just like, you know what, let's start out with something small. Let's get some cash flow on the side, and let's start building it and see where it goes. I wish I had done mobile home parks. I wish I'd really learned that niche back in 2008 and done mobile home parks. But the problem with that space right now, it's a little bit smaller. It's really, concentrated, and they're going away. They're tearing them down. There's not as much, I don't want to say liquidity, but it's more of a niche market. I think multifamily is just encompassing, and I'm fortunate to have chosen it because the millennials out there and the baby boomers, they're renting right now, and they're going to continue to rent. So that's what's exciting to me. The demographics point to that. The demand is there, and there's not enough supply. We need to build more multifamily because there's not enough apartments on the market. So I see this perfect storm going on as when we get past this, people are going to continue to rent because, first of all, not many people can, put down $20, $30, $50, $100,000 to buy a home, but there's a lot of people out there that are going to be renting their homes.
I was going to ask you, Gino, what was that first deal like? It took you 18 months to get it. How'd you guys find it?
It was scary, just like everything else, right? The first time you do something together with somebody, I remember we were looking at the deal. We found it on LoopNet, right? And the deal was listed for $750,000. And it was on LoopNet for a couple of years. Now, everyone listening, just listen, because this is going to come right back now. It was a motivated seller. It was a mom and pop seller. That's what we do. That's where we buy from. We've bought 1,500 units. They've all been mom and pops in one form or another. And that just basically means a seller who's motivated, somebody who has a problem that you can solve. It could be a divorcee. It could be somebody who's moving out of state. It could be someone who's got 1031 money. It could be brothers who are just fighting. It can be partners who are fighting. It can be a mom and pop who has no systems. For us, it was a mom and pop, husband and wife. They were older. They had some health issues. They just wanted to get out. And I remember looking at the deal at $750,000, and I said to Jake, I think it's worth around $550 to $600. So we offered $600, and they took it right off the bat. I was like, man, that wasn't good negotiation. We could you learn, right? But the great thing about it was 25 units. It was all contiguous, some cottages, mixed uses, and it was right up my alley. I was mentoring with a guy named Fixer Jay DeSima, and that's what he's looking for, these mom and pops. And it was, what I loved about it was the opportunity. I mean, the income was there. They were weekly renters, and I would not buy the property now, but for our first deal, there's so much value in that first deal. We got owner financing on that first deal, so the sellers held a note, so I was able to come up with less money out of my pocket. That is coming back today, everybody who's listening on this. That seller financing, owner financing is going to be coming back because there's going to be a lot of sellers who have equity in their deals. Buyers can't get these deals financed. I think sellers are going to come up with some owner financing. So the first deal had everything about it. As we like to say, it was a heavy lift. It had a lot of hair, but there was so much value in it because it was being mismanaged. It didn't have a website. They were renting it out to anybody. They were weekly renters. I mean, the list goes on and on of just why the deal was great. And it was a great learning lesson for us. It was only 25 units. So I always tell students, and I always tell people that I talk about, think big, but start small. You don't need to start with a 100-unit complex. You don't need to be on Instagram and telling everybody that, I'm going out for 300 units. Who cares? I mean, most people are doing that, are partnering up with others. We started small because we knew we could take down 25 units, that we knew that the process of, oh, wow, if we have 3 vacants, rehab those units in time. If you start out with a 100-unit property, you get 20 vacants, and you don't have team members, and you don't have systems and processes, you're going to crash and burn. And that doesn't sound sexy, like we said about managing, but that's the reality of it. So we started with that. We self-managed that first deal, and Jake, ever since then, has been managing our entire portfolio. And we love that size. We love that 3 months after that first deal, we had our second opportunity come up, and we closed on our second deal. 6 months after the second deal, was a 136-unit property. So you see what happens is there's momentum building. It doesn't matter whether it's a 4-unit or 14-unit. That first deal, if it's a good deal, you're going to feel really confident. You've got credibility. You've closed. And now all of a sudden, if you want to go out and raise capital, you've got the credentials that you've done a deal. So I just tell everybody, you know what? Don't worry how big the deal is. Just worry about getting the deal done, a good deal.
So you said you found that deal on LoopNet, and I think the saying right now goes, if a deal goes on LoopNet, it's been picked over and it's probably dead.
Mm-hmm. Why
do you think that seller, it took them 3 years to sell, and then when you came along and offered them $150,000 less than the offer price, why were they willing to accept that offer at that time?
So I think it's really amazing what's going to be happening right now. I'm sure that if you guys have been talking to brokers and calling brokers over the last 18 months, it's been really hard to get a hold of them, correct?
Yeah.
Well, that paradigm is completely going to shift right now, because there's going to be deals out there that are getting taken off listings. And I think back then, brokers weren't pricing these deals properly, or they're going to a seller saying, I can get you $750. The deal stays on there and they don't get any bites. 2 months go by, 3 months go by, 6 months go by. And then all of a sudden, the seller gets a little nervous and they're like, you know what? I need to sell this thing. And they become motivated. And that's the only thing in life. When you can find a true deal in life, you need motivation from the other side, and you need to be able to solve their problem. They were old. They were really beat up. They were burned out. They've been doing this property for years. So when we came across and we showed them our underwriting, we showed them, you know what? You're right. That's what it's worth. And you know what? We'll give you 10% owner financing on this. Oh, and you know what? We'll change a couple of roofs that we need to change and do a little bit of painting and a little bit of deferred maintenance. It all works out because when you're not there beating them up and saying to them, what can we do to get this done? I want to buy this property. You want to sell it. We're the ones to buy it. You have to sell them on your ability to close the deal also. So, a lot of things work hand in hand. And John, you're going to see that coming on right now. A lot of these deals are going to be overpriced. When you overprice an asset and it sits there for a little while, it doesn't look good. And then all of a sudden, the sellers are going to get motivated and they're willing to take their price. Now, that's the hard part about real estate. You really need to be out there and making those relationships with those brokers and finding out what deals are. And what's going to be harder the next couple of months here is what's pricing. Are tenants paying? What's going to be happening with the stimulus? What kind of financing can we get? Do we need to have 12 months of reserves raised in addition to whatever the LTV is? Those are going to really affect pricing going forward. So it really comes down to managing these properties. If these operators can manage the properties and collect the rents, they're going to be okay. But you're going to have a lot of operators out there that are going to drop the ball, and they're going to have, NOI dropping through the roof, and you're going to have cap rates increasing. That's a recipe for property values dropping, a lot. So you're going to be out there, and hopefully we had spoke about the managed, right? You can really, look at it and see what's going on with the managed portion and why your expense is so high and what you can do, where the value is to manage that property and get NOI back up.
Yeah, Gino, you mentioned manage right. I love your guys' mantra, buy right, finance right, manage right. What does that mantra mean to you guys in your group?
Well, to us, it's really our proprietary 3-step framework, right? If you think about it, we complicate things, but if you're looking at an investment, Jake is sitting out in his backyard one day, about 5-6 years ago, and he's always cutting trees down. He's always burning stuff back there, and he's cutting the grass, and he sees a wheelbarrow, and he looks at it, and he goes, wow, buy right is the back leg of the wheelbarrow. Finance right is the right leg of the wheelbarrow. Those are fixed. Once you do both of those, that's it. You're done. People say you make money when you buy real estate. If you can buy the property right, it's done. You can never take that back, right? The finance portion, right now, we're looking at fixed long-term rate financing. If you don't have to sell real estate and you can hold on to your bills, you're not going to lose money. When you lose money, when you have to sell real estate, that's when you lose money. So right now, if you can get the finance rate portion correct, that's awesome. And the manage rate is the wheel. The manage is in constant motion. It's a business. I mean, when we started, we didn't know that. We were the I'm a guys. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. and I'm going to do everything. And it's okay when you first start out because you really need to learn. But as you start scaling, that's why you want to get into multifamily, because you can hire property managers, because you can hire maintenance techs, because you can hire team members and vendors that can help you scale your business. So for us, that mantra came pretty clear after our third deal. We're like, wow, if you can buy these assets at right prices right now, because now the whole thing that we've been preaching is buying actuals, right? If it don't cash flow, let the grass grow. You know what? That's coming. That's coming back into style right now. You know what I'm saying? Like back then, everyone's like, cap rates don't mean anything. You need to buy an actuals right now with upside, and you're not going to pay for upside right now. So if you can buy the property right, get some great financing, the managed right portion is what's left, and you've got to take care of that managed right portion.
Could you just elaborate on what you mean by buy on actuals?
Yeah. So for us, when we started buying, I'm going to tell you, we were buying properties back in 2013 at 8 and 9 caps. But you have to remember the financing rates were a lot high, not a lot higher, but that first deal we did, we got a 6% interest rate. That's what we got. And rates were probably like around 5.25 back then. When we refinanced that property 18 months later, and we were able to pull out about $180,000 on the refi and roll, that rate dropped to 4.25. So that rate dropped, and we went to a 25-year amortization. So when you're buying on actuals, you want to buy with an actual in-place cap rate. If cap rates are 6% in your market, you want to buy at an actual 6 cap with upside. You're not going to buy a property with a 6 cap and there's no value add there, right? And the other thing is, what's the cash on cash return? You want to have a certain cash on cash return parameter. When we were buying, 10% and 12% was the norm. You know, the last couple of years, I mean, some deals are 3%, 4%. Hopefully adding value, right? And a lot of guys are going to get stuck right now because they've been having this rent growth. They're thinking rent growth is going to go 3, 4, 5%. They've been predicting and projecting. Well, I want to know what's rent growth going to be for the next 12 months. You're hoping that you can collect rent and rents aren't going to grow. Now, after 6 or 12 months, I think rents might go back on the upswing. But you know, that's what buying on actuals is. What is your cash on cash day one? And then what you do is you underwrite your actuals, and then you underwrite for your pro forma. What can it turn out to be? That's really important when you're underwriting deals and buying deals. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I can't wait till we can start buying on some actuals.
It's coming. Yeah. It's coming.
So I wanted to go back to the management though. So you said that first deal you and Jake bought, you were doing that I'm gonna do everything. So what changed and what systems did you start to develop so where you could actually have a management company that wasn't running your life? And then what allowed your business to truly scale from that point?
So for us, when we took over, we had a resident manager on that property. It was 25 units. That's why the race to 100 units, because when you have 100 units under management, you can hire a full-time leasing agent, a full-time property manager, and you get a full-time maintenance tech. So that first property was hard for us because Jake was working full-time. He'd go in during the week, collect the rents. We had no systems ourselves either, right? We'd just show up, Friday, and whoever paid rent, paid rent. For us, we created our own website. We didn't have a website. We had an application process. We were starting to do criminal and credit background checks. We hadn't done that before. Very important systems that you want to implement and that's how you start scaling businesses, by seeing what you need to do and by implementing. Right now, virtual leasing, guys, there's a problem right now going on. What's the opportunity? The opportunity is, virtual leasing. People don't want to. Our offices are closed. Our employees are there, but our offices are closed. Well, if they want to go see an office, you do a virtual tour and you do virtual leasing. So that's the new thing that's going to come out of this. I don't want to call it a problem, but this pandemonium that we've been having. So virtual leasing. So technology is going to be coming out with artificial intelligence, where you're going to have a leasing agent who's virtual, go online. They're going to be scheduling, talking to a machine through text, and they're going to be getting online with a leasing agent. So that's going to be a much more efficient plan going on. And basically having that website, we didn't have any of those systems. And when we started scaling up, we got property management software. Back then, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. Right now, a lot of our students are using Buildium. We use Appfolio because Appfolio, after 100 units, you can use it. But Buildium is a great product for starting out, and you can scale into it. And it's very, very affordable. And it has all the tools. Everything's inside. Maintenance calls. You're doing, T12s in there. You can actually start leasing your properties through there. I mean, it's a great platform. And that's one thing you need. You need something like that when you start scaling up. And when you guys start buying, think of the end in mind. Don't think of, I'm going to stay at 4 units, 6 units, 12 units. Think that you're going to scale into something bigger so you can grow into whatever you're looking to do.
So with the staffing on that property, I'm wondering, someone who's buying their first deal, and maybe they are looking at 20 to 30 units,
mm-hmm.
how would you recommend they staff that property until they can get to that 100 units?
So for us, the resident manager, it's not easy. Resident managers are difficult, but right now, I think it's gonna be a lot easier because there's gonna be a lot of people that are out of work are looking for part-time help. And a resident manager, you can pay them by the hour. They're not W-2s or 1099 because you're not controlling their environment. You're saying, hey, can you work for me by 5, 10, 15 hours a week on the property? Opening up the apartments, showing an apartment, letting the contractors come in, making sure the property is nice and clean. And a resident manager can really help you out in the smaller properties. And as you start growing, that's why for us, when we see a smaller property, we just closed on a 52-unit property. It's not big enough to have its own property manager, but we have another property next door to it that we're going to couple with the same office, and we're going to share resources. So that's the thing. So the race is you get your first deal. Property management companies, you can still hire a third-party property manager to manage that. They won't staff somebody on site, but they'll be able to take care of it, with their other properties. So for us, the resident manager was a stopgap. The first property had one, the second property had one, and then the third property, like I said, a year later, within a year, we were able to hire property managers for the portfolio.
So Gino, your company is vertically integrated. At what point in time did you find the value of vertically integrating in this industry?
Great. That's a great question. I mean, I've been doing a lot of business reading. And I think one thing that's really stuck out with me was somebody said, if it's your core competency, you don't want to really farm that out. You don't really want to get it out. So for Jake and Gino, the education, coaching is really important to us. So we want to handle that fulfillment in-house. So all our coaches are hired by us. We train our coaches. And I think it's the same thing in multifamily. For us, it's a core competency. When we take money from our investors, it's a fiduciary responsibility to try to get the best rate of return on their money, right? And so for us, having that vertical integration, being able to buy the assets, being able to raise the capital, and being able to property manage those, we're putting our heart and soul into it. We're taking care of it, and we are actually, managing those properties, I think, more efficiently, better cost basis, and we're having our own money in the deals. So on that third deal we bought, it was 136 units, and I remember buying it. It was 80% occupied, so we had community bank financing on it. Out of 136 units, I think 80%, there's probably 35 units that were vacant. And for us, that vertical integration really helped out because we were able to turn those units really quick. We were like 4 units a month, 5 units a month we were turning. By the end of 6 months, the thing was fully leased up. And I remember, I don't know if a property management company would have been as diligent as us, pushing every day, getting on there, making sure that we were turning the units, renting those units at a higher rate. So it's just like the real estate agent. If you know that you can get $595 for a 2-bedroom and a property management company says, you know what, that might be a little high, I'm going to start at $575. No, we're the owners. We want to maximize NOI. So we're going to push the envelope as much as possible. So for us, that came into play in a lot of situations. And also cost savings. When we're turning a unit, we know what those costs are. So we're able to save a couple $1,000s on the turn, whereas a property management company might charge you a little bit more. So that's where we saw right away, wow, the cost savings and the ability to, see what your store is doing and what your house is doing and being able to save money on the investment.
So in your opinion, is it just that the property manager is trying to make their job easier by offering lower rents and putting in a little bit of buffer into the maintenance and those unit turns?
John and Fritz, I'm going to tell you something. Property management is a hard business. It's a thankless business. If the power goes out right now, we're pissed, right? We take it for granted that the power is going to be on. And it's the same thing with property management. When you're renting an apartment and you're in the apartment, everything's great for 29 out of 30 days. Your hot water heater may go out, and then what happens? All hell breaks loose, right? That one day. So it's a thankless job. It's a hard job. You're dealing with people's emotions. They're residents. They're not tenants. They're not units. They're their homes. And that's what a lot of people forget. They only look at the numbers, but you're dealing with people's lives, with people's memories, with people's jobs, with people's, their experiences and where their families are growing up. And it's a hard job. So for us, we take that seriously. Our core values are people first, right? And that's what we focus on. And that's part of the thing with management companies. It's hard to get the job done. And a lot of times they're not thanked and they're underappreciated. So for them to run the property, sometimes owners are trying to cut back. There's really a push and pull with the owners and with the property managers. Property managers want to spend more money and get that unit done. Owners are trying to cut costs and trying to get as much money over to their investors. So you have that push and pull where should I spend more? Should I spend less? And then obviously, just like any other industry, you're going to have great property managers and you're going to have bad property managers. You just need to go out there and see which ones are in business, which ones have been doing business for a long time, and which ones fit your niche. Because there are ones out there that do smaller properties and there are ones out there that do bigger properties. Just remember, there's a couple of things I would say about property managers. Make sure that they're up to the times with technology. And if they've got a lot of papers in their car and they've got paper leases, stay away, because they're the ones who aren't evolving. They're the one that you need to evolve right now, because Gen Z wants to be able to do a lease on the phone, and they want to be able to check the phone out and go on apartments.com and see what you got. And if your property manager is not doing that, stay away from that.
So I think something that's really key is that you called your tenants residents, and you're providing them a home. It's not just a transaction based business for you. What are you doing at your properties to create a sense of community?
That's a great question, because what you're trying to do is create a customer experience. I mean, Jake is always saying that he wants to be the Chick-fil-A of apartments. So what do you do when you go to, I've been to Chick-fil-A once, by the way, so I didn't know what the big hype was, but I was amazed that they are proactive in their customer experience and their customer service. Very few companies are reactive. Oh, when the food comes out cold or when I got overcharged, I can fix that. What they do is you drive into the parking lot, they greet you there, they take your order, and as you're going to it, they're making sure they've got multiple touch points. The customer experience is really great at that place when you walk in there. And that's what you're trying to do with your customer service in multifamily or in any business. So for us, we've been evolving. It's been a real long progression, trying to get something what we call net promoter scores. We're trying to get really great ratings from our tenants. We're trying to create a customer experience that it's easy to lease an apartment, to give them all the information up front, and to educate them about why they need to get renter's insurance, and to know that when they have a maintenance request in, that we'll try to get to it as quickly as possible and let them know, oh, why didn't we get there? And oh, by the way, how is the service? And to let them know 60 days before their lease is up, hey, we'd love to have you back. And just trying to be proactive and be in front of them, because the C space, it's been underutilized and it's been underserved. I think that's the lost class, because people are just taken for granted, and there's not a lot of customer service in that space. You know, when you have a great, beautiful property with a clubhouse and a sauna and a fitness center and a cafe, those tenants, they demand more, they're paying more, so they usually get better service. But when you're in a workforce, affordable housing type space, they're really forgotten. I mean, hey, you know, your stove is out, you can wait a few days for the stove to be out, and a lot of owners do that. So to try to be proactive, and that, John, that's one of the tips. I think most people think that tenants leave because you raise the rent. No, the majority, I would say at least 75% leave because your customer service sucks.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A, that's God's chicken, right? So I know you guys are very like community oriented, and your team is actually very culture oriented. You guys do a lot of stuff in the community.
Mm-hmm.
How has building a culture like that in your company helped you guys?
So for us, we started creating our core values about 18 months ago. And I thought core values, it's crap. You know, when I had the restaurant, I would always blame the employees. These people stink. I mean, you know, and unfortunately, it wasn't the people that stunk. It's I stunk. You know, you attract not what you want, but what you are. And people don't understand that. That's what you're attracting every day. If you're going to be watching the news and the media and you're negative, you're going to be attracting that negativity. And listen, it's really sort of self-fulfilling, because when I was at the restaurant, I started hating it, and I put off bad energy, and that's why I started attracting. And I started blaming everybody. I had no core values. I had no culture. So for us, you know, creating those core values and hiring and firing on those core values and getting the right people in the right seats it means everything in any business. So for us, unwavering ethics, you know, growth mindset, all the people that come on board, I want them to continue their education. I want them to be better today than they were yesterday. And, you know, as a leader, I want to embody that. I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly trying to get better. For us, it's people first. I'm shipping books. If a student needs a call at 7 o'clock at night, or I need to get on a podcast late in the afternoon, I'll do anything. So if I do that, I want to embody that core value. It's not just a marketing ploy. Really, you need to embody those, and you need to figure out what you want to live by. So unwavering ethics, extreme ownership. If something goes wrong, I don't want to blame an employee. Let's own up to it. Let's fix it and find a solution. That's what I hope the government and what we're trying to do. We're not looking at the problem and trying to point fingers. What we want to do as entrepreneurs is try to find out what the solution is and fix that problem, and then document the problem, and let's not make that happen again, because we know that that's a problem, but looking for the solution. So for us, core values is huge. It's really important. People first is the most important one, because we have residents, we have Jake and Gino students, and we have investors also. So for us, focusing on those three and people first has been really important for us.
So core values is definitely something I've heard brought up on multiple calls that I've had. How would you guide somebody in creating their core values for their company?
That's a tough one. I think we should even have core values for our families, right? I mean, and even a mission statement, right? So our mission statement is to create communities that allow people to become the best version of themselves. So our communities, like I said, they involve the education community, they involve the investor community, and the tenant or resident community. So that's that. I think what we did is we read a book called Scaling Up, and we started doing Petra coaching. And that really helped us out. It gave us a lot of clarity. And it's a lot of work because you have to sit down and figure out what your values are, what you want to embody, and then how do you translate that into your companies? So for me, the growth mindset was really important because especially nowadays with technology and with everything moving so quickly, you got to continue to grow and to learn. And if you don't, you're going to die. I think even employees nowadays, with the Armageddon going on right now, with unemployment going to 20%, all of a sudden those C players out there, they're going to be unemployed. Anyone who can bring value to a team and anyone who wants to grow is going to show their value in this economy. So for us, work on your core values, work on what your values are, and work on what you want your company to look like. That's probably the best advice that I could give. There's so many books out there. You can look at Traction by Gino Wickman. There was the Scaling Up book that I talked about. David Finkel from Maui Mastermind has a lot of stuff on core values. Take a look at his stuff. It's really just figuring out that it's not a marketing ploy. It's really things that you need to live by.
I know that's definitely an area I need to improve on, is the core values. What I really want to ask is, though, when you're hiring people, how do you make sure that they align with their core values and that they don't just look them up online and come up with some canned answers for their interview?
That's the hardest thing to do, actually. The hardest thing for an entrepreneur is actually to know when to hire. That's really hard. That's like the hardest thing. When we started scaling up, our biggest thing, especially with Jake and Gino, I waited too long to get an operations manager. I was doing interviews. I was doing emails. I was taking the live events and doing live event schedules and all that. So for us, the interview process is really important. That's why we're doing that NPS, the scores, even for the hiring process. And it's really just sitting down and having a conversation and asking those tough questions. We've got questions that we go through the interview. And for us, for the property managers, we're not looking for someone with property management experience, believe it or not. Our best property managers have come from customer service. They've come from Ruth Chris, believe it or not. Two of our top property managers, because they embody the customer service. Anybody can learn how to property manage, right? Not that many people have the ability, the emotional intelligence to be able to manage people. And people coming from that customer service area, we've pulled a lot of people from there. The hours are better. The pay is probably the same. They're not working on the weekends. They have regular jobs, and they can grow within our organization. So for us, asking those tough questions, and you can even start doing DISC assessments with people if they want to take assessments and see how they are. I mean, those, they change because I used to be more of a D. Now I'm more of a C, but I just fluctuate with the times. But basically trying to understand what a person's personality is and seeing if they're going to fit in that role. And then obviously just asking them candid questions to see, hey, are you going to fit here? Do you embody these? And then, you're going to have to take a chance. You hire slow and you fire fast. If you 6 months ago, we had an employee we thought was great. Jake told her to do something. She's like, that's not my job. Well, you know what? She didn't have a job. So you have to hire slow, hire on them. But when they don't fit those core values, you just need to get rid of them. And that's the hardest thing to do. Even for me, it's really hard to get rid of an employee that I like. But if they don't embody the core values, it's going to be a cancer in the organization. And if you don't get rid of that cancer, it's going to spread throughout the organization and it's going to really hurt the organization.
Are you struggling to understand how to underwrite multifamily properties? Hi, I'm John Stober, and I completely understand your problem. I thought underwriting would come naturally to me due to my background in finance and accounting, but I quickly found out that there aren't a lot of resources that cover this subject. I had no idea whether what I was doing was right, wrong, or just original. I don't want you to have to pick up little nuggets here and there like I did. So I wrote an ebook called How to Analyze Big Apartment Buildings and Make Them Feel Small that puts together all the pieces of the puzzle. We're also giving away a deal analyzer with the ebook, and they're both completely free. Don't wait as long as I did to start chasing financial freedom. Go to bit.ly/underwriting ebook and get your free copy today. So you mentioned two terms, NPS and DISC. What are those?
So NPS is Net Promoter Scores. We're using something called top grading. And it's more advanced, but we need to do this because we need to have systems to be able to hire people. You want to be able to use the same exact system when hiring people. And a DISC assessment, it's more, I think it's a personality test. You go on there, just Google DISC, and it's
Tony
dominant.
Robbins, right?
Yeah. You go on there. I'm a C. I'm conscientious. I like systems. I like to be on myself a little bit. But I used to go into the dominant, where I just take a role and I just really want to crush it and go forward and commit and then figure it out kind of thing. So it's really important to learn yourself. If you're the kind of person who's quiet and shy, and you're with a person who's an I, for instance, who likes to talk and was very gregarious, that person might annoy the crap out of you, but you just have to know why, right? Because that's their personality. And if you know who's someone like Jake, who's dominant and who's like, who will bull rush you, and you're the more of the conscientious, quiet, calm type of person, those people are going to clash. So if you can understand the type of personality that you are and the type of personality that is opposite you, you can temper your attitude and the way you talk to the person, the way you present yourself to the person. And it's just an awareness for you to be able to deal with others.
Yeah, that must be why me and Fritz clash so much.
Who's the D?
It might be me.
See?
Be me.
Yeah.
Gino, so I know in the first couple of deals, you guys didn't syndicate them. What made you guys turn over to syndication?
So our first 1,000 units, we didn't syndicate. We bought our own first 1,000 units, me, Jake, and my partner, Mike. We were able to refi over $9 million on those first 1,000 units. And you know why? It was just maybe lack of education. I just thought, hey, I want all the equity myself. I don't want to take a risk. I don't want to deal with investors. And we started syndicating around a year and a half ago. And I just learned basically by podcasting people and by saying, wow, it's not having those limiting beliefs, right? And opening up and going, that's just a tool in the toolbox. You don't need to do syndication all the time now, right? But it's just a tool to get into much bigger deals. We could still buy a $10 or $12 million deal internally, the three of us, but why not spread your risk and diversify your risk and buy one deal and create another stream of revenue with you being a limited partner in the deal and you having general partner and asset management fees and scaling it up. So syndication is fantastic. It's a great way to start scaling up, but we just didn't do it because we didn't know about it. And, back in 2013, the Jobs Act had just come out a year before. So syndication wasn't the hot topic, right? And over the last few years, it has been. And I just wanted to learn about it. And I think it's fantastic. Syndication is great. JVing is great. Partnering is great. Owner financing is great. They're just tools in the toolbox. You need to know when to use them and how to use them.
So has your model changed at all when you do a syndication versus when you do a deal in-house?
That's a great question. I mean, we talk about the 3 pillars of real estate and their market cycle, it's debt, and it's exit strategy. So when we're buying a deal for ourselves, it's a little bit different. We can take a little bit more risk. We don't need to get paid on our draws, right? So we just bought a deal back about a little over a year ago. We bought it. It wasn't a syndication. We couldn't get a preferred rate of return. And we just didn't want to take that risk and tell the investors, hey, we're not getting paid for the next 12 to 15 months because we need to do a heavy lift. So for us, it was a great deal internally. We were able to take the risk. It was community bank financing. So it was recourse debt. I know a lot of investors don't want recourse debt. They want non-recourse. So syndication, for the vast majority of them, you've got to do non-recourse debt. So this was community financing. The financing was great on it. So for us, that was a deal we bought internally. Syndications for us, we want more of what we would call a momentum play where there's some cash flow in place. We can give a return to our investors and there's upside. And we're also with the syndication model, we can go into those $15 million, $20 million, $25 million deals because we can raise that capital from investors.
So could you just explain what recourse and non-recourse debt is, and then why in a syndication is it so much more key to have non-recourse debt?
Yeah, sure. So recourse debt is basically, you are on the hook. You're personally guaranteeing the loan. So if that loan goes belly up or you lose money in the deal, you have to personally guarantee that loan. It's coming out of your funds. Non-recourse means that deal only goes to that deal itself. So let's say you lose the deal, they're not coming after you personally. If you're signing on that debt though, you know what? You're never going to get another deal, but at least it's limited to that deal itself. So when you have a general partner and a limited partner in a deal, the limited partners are the ones who are putting up the majority of the capital. Those guys are only limited to that deal. So let's say you put in $50,000, John, with me, and then that deal goes belly up and I lose everything, you only lose $50,000. Me as the general partner, I am in big trouble because I've signed on the debt. I will never go out and get another loan unless I make that loan whole going forward. So it's a big stipulation. And a lot of people get stuck up on it. And I just say to them, what's the downside risk? To me, it was, am I going to start with recourse debt and then, not start with recourse debt? Or stay at the restaurant. So I said, my risk is if I don't use recourse debt in the beginning, I'm never going to get into real estate. So I need to take these risks and I'm going to pay back my loans anyway. So if that goes belly up and I make a mistake, I'm going to pay that eventually. So for us, community banks were awesome. I love community banks, especially starting out. They're easier to work with. Their terms are much more flexible. You're able to grow with them. And from there, we actually refinanced from community to the agencies, to Fannie and Freddie down the road. And then we're still buying with community financing. Our last deal we bought with Community Bank. So it's applicable, just like syndication. It's just a tool in the toolbox. It's a form of financing. Some deals work great with it. Some deals don't work great with it.
So what are some of the key differences you've noticed between agency debt and the community bank debt? I've heard that amortization periods and the interest rates can be pretty between the two.
Yeah. Well, so, community bank financing, usually you can get a 25-year amortization. I very, very rarely can get a 30. Agencies are normally 30. Community bank financing, you can get maybe a year, 18 months of interest only. Agencies have gone up to 7-10-year IO periods where they just interest only periods. So basically your cash on cash return, your rates of return will be higher because you're not paying any principal down. Other differences, community bank financing, possibly 5-year terms, 7-year terms. After that, they might reset or they might just float at a certain interest rate. The agencies are different. Some of them do 10-year terms, some do 15-year terms, 12-year terms, so that the terms are a lot longer, so you can lock it out. And it really depends on where interest rates are, where the 10-year is. With agencies, we've been getting lower rates. So at the time of this writing, they're going to be going up to 4.5%, but community banks tend to have rates that are a little bit higher.
So then what types of deal does the community bank financing, what are they best for? What's that tool?
So for us, the community banks are great because they know the market. So for us, the smaller deals, $1 million deals up to $5 and $6 million deals, they're great at those deals because they can give you loan to cost. We got an 85% loan to cost on that deal, which basically means they're funding 85% of all the renovations also. So, which is great. Yeah. So you see the leverage. And why do they do that? Because they know that we're strong. They know that our balance sheets are strong, because community banks, they look at you just as much as they look at the deal. I think the agencies look at the deal a lot more than you because you're raising capital, as long as you have the net worth requirements from the general partners and all. But the community banks, they should know the market. So they know that. And those smaller deals, with us, we've been able to get better leverage on those deals. And then the prepayment penalties are smaller. So remember that exit strategy. If I'm looking to refi after 2 or 3 years, the prepayment penalties may be 1% or small. So I can refi out of them. I can refi back to the same community bank and pull out more capital, or I can go to an agency bank, agency lending.
Awesome.
I guess I wanted to know, what made you guys decide to create this educating community?
So for us, at 200 units, Jake's like, "You want to write a book?" I'm like, "Okay." Let's write a book, So he's like, after that, he's like, "You want to start a podcast?" I'm like, "Sure, let's start a podcast." "You want to write another book?" I'm like, "Sure, let's write another book." The second book, The Honeybee, just came out. You guys want to start a podcast? So we've got 4 podcasts. We've got a couple of books, the education, but it's a slow progression. And I think the most amazing thing, the coolest thing about it is, you learn, you do, and you teach, right? And we don't know everything out there, right? Even when you're educating, no one's really truly an expert, because if we were all experts, everyone would have seen this coming. Nobody saw this coming, right? So as an educator, and when you get on, you're learning constantly and you're becoming a better investor. So that was like one of the best benefits to start the education. The other one is you start getting on these podcasts with Robert Kiyosaki and Cameron Herold and T. Harv Eker and Ken McElroy, and you start doing these little mini masterminds, and you learn so much from them and just being locked in. The next one is you start having this great community of friends and people who are joining, who are taking down deals. Our students have done almost 6,000 units to date. I'm sure that's even more because I lose track of it. But, we're changing students' lives, and it's a freaking cool thing to do. So I started it out more as a selfish thing for me to learn to become a better investor and to lock myself in and learn from other people. But ultimately, it's been one of those rewarding things in life where if I don't make any money from it, but I'm helping people out, it's freaking awesome.
I think that's starting this podcast. That's been the key thing, is just like the connections that we're making with people. We're getting to speak with you right now and just learning so much. So
yep. And continue to do that. Right. And that's the cool thing about it. And most people are like, "Well, I'm not ready. I don't have the right mic. I don't look good. I look stupid." Dude, I still look stupid. I still sound stupid. It doesn't matter. Right. Because that's how you learn. You put yourself out there, you commit, and then you figure it out. If you're worrying about what kind of mic or the lighting, that doesn't really mean anything, because a year down the road, you'll have that figured out. There'll be another obstacle to go up against. So just start. Basically, just start. And it's okay, because we're all figuring it out. Everyone is winging it out there, especially now. We're all winging it and figuring it out. The guys who are out there winging it and not really caring what happens, but pivoting and learning from their mistakes and growing and implementing, I think those are the ones who are going to be successful.
So you obviously have the acquisitions part of your company. property management, you have a lending arm too, correct?
We have Rand Capital. So the Rand Capital is doing mortgages for students. And that's another thing that if we don't do a ton of mortgages, it's great having that piece because it's an education piece for our students. And we're finding out daily what's going on with the agencies. We're finding out what's happening with rates. We're finding out right now what's happening. Are they doing forbearance? Are they changing their programs? Are they lending? So for us, that's an amazing piece for us. I love it because I get daily updates from that. We have the investor arm, which you said, great. If you want to be a student and learn from us, awesome. Become part of the education. If not, we've got this passive side right here that you can invest with us also. So, and our students are learning while they're earning. So it's just a great symbiotic relationship amongst all of the entities. And think about it, that it started out with a 25-unit property. It's pretty crazy, to be honest with you. From a small little 25-unit crack den, you've got, multiple streams of revenue, but you need to start. Doesn't matter how big the property is. Once you start, you buy a deal, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Gino, I think you're around 1,500 units now. From 0 to 1,500. What have been some of your biggest takeaways?
For us, it's three things. It's people, it's systems, and it's culture. When you're buying your first couple of deals, that's not even on the radar. You're just trying to get deals. You're trying to build up cash flow. And you're trying to get $100 per door. Been there, done that, and that's true. As you start scaling, the profitability might come less because you need to hire more people, but you're actually creating a business to help you scale. And I think the other thing, Fritz, that really was enlightening to me was at the restaurant, I was washing dishes. I was doing those tasks that were really $10 an hour tasks. And I learned as an entrepreneur and trying to build a business, you have to get away from those tasks and try to delegate those things that you can't do yourself. And it's hard. For the first 2 years, Jake was editing the podcast. I mean, it took us 2 years, dude. And we should have gotten off that because the thing is, we got somebody to do it for $15 an hour. That's the first thing. And the second thing, he hated doing it. And it took him so long. He had to waste a couple hours a week doing that. Could he have been doing something different with those 2 hours? Absolutely. So that's a hard thing to do, hiring and getting those tasks. And, the internet's great. Virtual assistants are out there. You can get temporary help. And we didn't exploit that in the beginning. We were doing the I'm a mentality. We were learning a lot of the stuff. Now, getting rid of that control, because as an entrepreneur, you just have that control. And as a landlord, you want that control. But you just need to know that if you're going to grow and create a lifestyle and create a business, you're going to have to start delegating a lot of that stuff that you can't do anymore and focus on those tasks that you like to do. Do you like to get on a podcast? Do you like to go raise capital? Do you like to underwrite deals? Do you like to manage the property? Do you like to talk to brokers? What do you really like to do? And find out where the value is and where you want to excel and focus on that more.
That's so true. This week, I'm actually off for 2 weeks from my day job, and I've been able to work on how-to videos. And it's made me actually even think more because we had to think like, okay, this is what we're going to give them. Well, what do I need to give them? Okay, well, here's a new system. And it's just, it's been really cool to kind of just think of it all as like a conveyor belt pretty much.
That's awesome.
So what I want to know though is at the beginning, like you said, when you're just trying to acquire these deals and get the 100, 150 bucks a month a door in cash flow, should you be focused on building these systems or should you just be worried about getting that first deal or two or whatever it takes to get to 100 units?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're first starting out, just get into a deal. Don't worry about anything else. Get into a good deal that it's a single or a double. Maybe you don't have to hit home run, but get into that first deal. But always have it in the back of your mind that multifamily is ultimately a business if you want to be successful and if you want to scale. So don't worry. That's what I'm saying. Like commit and then figure it out. Because when you buy that first deal, you're like, oh, wow, I did that wrong, but it's okay. We got 6% interest on our first deal. We got a 20-year AM. We refied that out. If we hadn't made that mistake, we wouldn't be here talking. So for us, focus on what you want to do. And I think, for me, one of the best things that I ever did was go to life coaching school. I became a life coach. And for me, it was personal development. It was really about getting clarity about what I wanted, right? And I was able to focus on that and saying I wanted to leave the restaurant and I wanted to build a business. I wanted to build multiple streams of revenue. So that's what gave me the clarity. So when you're first starting out, don't worry about building them. Don't worry about all this other stuff. Don't worry about all these things. Just worry about buying the deal. But obviously, you have to know the market. You have to align yourself with great people. You have to build the team. You don't need an all-star team when you buy your first or second deal. You just need to have a couple of broker relationships, maybe a community banker, a mortgage broker, and an inspector. And then from there, you buy your first deal, and then you start scaling up and you start adding those pieces to the puzzle. See, John, the problem is a lot of people start out and they're like, well, I don't have this. I can't start yet. It's just like the podcast. I don't have a broker. I don't have a contractor. I don't have a community banker. Well, you're going to get those people. You're going to find those as you're going on. That's why it takes a few months for you to start and to lay the groundwork. And people self-sabotage. You go, well, can't do it. It's not me. book by Carol Dweck. It's called Mindset. I think everyone should read the book because it's about a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. The fixed mindset says, I can't do it. You know what? It's hard. There's no way for me to do it. The growth mindset says, how can I figure that out? Like, there's a way for me to do it. Gino's done it. He's not that smart of a dude. Jake has done it. He's a pharmaceutical rep. They've done it. What have they done? And then you start growing out. You start committing and then figuring it out. And as you grow, you're going to pivot, learn that, and then make that mistake and then grow. We've made tons of mistakes. And one thing we do is we don't stop. We figure out what we did wrong, and then we just continue to grow upon that and continue to learn.
So Gino, what are you doing to continue to grow your business, especially with this economy we're heading into?
Well, one thing that we're doing is we're continuing to market. We're continuing to spend money on marketing dollars because right now everyone's shriveling up and we're continuing to spend. So Facebook, we're actually getting much better results because there's less money spent out there. So our cost per click is actually going down. We're reaching more people. And I think, Fritz, the most important thing that I probably should have said this is we don't scale and grow and have an ego about getting 6,000 units or 4,000 units. That's not what I wanted. I always tell people revenue is vanity, profit margins is sanity, and cash is king. Right now, you see the Grant Cardones of the world, they're blowing up because they're really bloated and they've got a ton of overhead and they've scaled maybe too much, or maybe they've just over leveraged or over expanded and didn't see. For us, we're pretty lean and mean, and we've bootstrapped a lot of our stuff. I mean, bootstrapping is not a sexy word, but that's what we've done. We've been pretty lean and pretty mean. We're pretty liquid. We've got a lot of CapEx reserves. I mean, hopefully it'll get us through that, but that's what we're doing. Just don't scale and buy a deal just to buy the deal. And it's been hard for the last 18 months. We haven't that many. The last 2 years, we've maybe bought 4 deals, and it's been really hard. We've got a lot of capital. We've underwritten hundreds of deals. You know how frustrating it is to tell the broker, I'm sorry, we can't make it this deal. We're just off by 400 grand. And I think they know, but at the same time, it's just frustrating to do that. So don't scale and grow just for the sake of it. Figure out why you're growing and why you're buying that next deal. No deal is better than a bad deal. Just remember that. I learned that the hard way. So don't scale just for the sense of scale, just for the sake of scaling. Know why you're buying these deals.
We had this guy, Brian Burke, on the show.
He's a beast, bro.
Yeah, well, he said, I can always beat the guy who gets a 0% return.
Yep.
So true.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I like him. Brian's a great guy.
Yeah, super knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we are running up on time, so I wanted to get to our Fast Five. It's the same 5 questions we ask every guest who comes on our show, and if you're ready, we will get right into it.
Ready.
All right. So if you had to start all over again and you were in your early 20s, how would you do that?
That's an easy question for me. For me, I would go for financial freedom. I would house hack, buy a triplex, a quad, have my bills paid for, and then find a niche that I really want to focus on and do that and get really good at it and continue to become an investor, have that investor mindset. When I started out, I had the restaurant, and that was ultimately a job, and it was a weekly thing. I wasn't building wealth. I really would love to have all these millennials focus on creating financial freedom for themselves, because when you're financially free, you can have the go-giver mindset. You can help others, and you don't need anything in return. How awesome was it when I was back in 2016 when I left the restaurant? I can jump on a coaching call and not get paid. I can pay it forward and I can help somebody out, and ultimately it comes back to me. So I wish back then I would say to myself, let me find an endeavor where I can become financially free and then start a business and create a business and focus on something that I like and grow it from there.
That was awesome. It's such a great tip, especially now. I'm sure people more than ever are realizing, hey, this job I have, they may not care about me as much as I thought, and I could lose this at any time.
Mm-hmm. And that's the fallacy. Everyone thinks a W-2 job is a safe, secure job, or a small business is a safe, secure job. It's not. There's nothing secure out there. There's nothing without risk out there. That's why when it says multifamily is risky, yeah, it is risky. So is the stock market when you're down 40% in 2 weeks. There's risk in everything. You're trying to mitigate your risk, and you're trying to become as efficient as possible and not get into that shiny object syndrome where you're really learning what you're doing. And you're trying to, limit your downside risk. That's what you're ultimately trying to do.
When you're talking about your job, Fritz, I'm just like pointing to myself like, that's me.
All right. Question number 2. How do you see young professionals adding the most value to experienced operators in this space?
There's a couple ways. I mean, figure out what you like to do. Maybe you go out and maybe you property manage. Maybe you do boots on the ground. Maybe you help them with their underwriting. Maybe you go to events and help them at their events. Maybe help with investor calls. There's so many different ways that I've just thrown out there that you can help. But really trying to add value, because, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Zig Ziglar. Big.
Yeah.
WIIFM, what's in it for me, radio station. That's what we're all about. Everyone's all about what's in it for me. Always look at it from what the other person needs, what that operator needs, or what that mentor needs, and try to have value. And look at it by not looking to get paid, looking to add value. And ultimately, there's going to be an opportunity where, hey, Fritz, I've got this 50-unit deal. You want 5% equity? You can run the whole property, let's say. Those opportunities will come about if you continue to add value to people and not expect anything in return.
Awesome tip. We actually had a guest named Kyle Mercati who came on. He did just that. He started out helping a more experienced investor run their meetup, just taking emails down at the door, and then he worked his way up to like getting on stage at the meetup, and that's how he got a whole bunch of investors.
Yep, that's awesome, dude. Great tip.
So what's the biggest mistake you've made in your career, and how have you since adjusted your business?
So for me, I think the two most important words are due diligence. I didn't do diligence on that mobile home park because I just didn't know the niche. I didn't know what a syndication was. Even back in 2005, he created syndication, and I didn't know it was a syndication. So I think due diligence is important in whatever industry, whatever investment you're doing. Really know the investment and know the sponsor. The sponsor is truly important. Somebody who's a sponsor who's running the deal, you need to be comfortable with them. You need to know them. They need to know what they're doing, and they need to have experience. So for me, that was the biggest mistake, not doing due diligence.
What's been your favorite way to incorporate technology and social media into your business?
I hate social media, dude. I'm not gonna lie to you. Facebook is great. We use private Facebook for Jake and Gino, and it's an amazing place. It's behind the curtain for our students. They ask questions. It's really engaging and all. Instagram, Jake's got over 20,000 followers on Instagram, so he likes to use it for social media. I think YouTube is fantastic. I think doing even internal videos for YouTube, we use that a lot for our students, and we do a lot of training videos on YouTube. We use a platform called Kajabi. That's our online training platform that we have all our trainings and all our academy videos housed on there. Trying to think, I think AppFolio for our property management software has been fantastic. That's another platform that we use. There's so many tools out there. There's so many different platforms out there. We use Asana. We use Slack. Trying to think of all the other stuff that we tend to use. There's so many different platforms out there. And the thing is, you're trying to keep it as simple as possible, not trying to get overwhelmed, and pick one or two mediums that you like. I tend to like Facebook a little bit more for engaging, doing Facebook Lives. If you're trying to do Facebook, you're trying to do LinkedIn, you're trying to do Twitter, you're trying to do Instagram, it's just too many. Try to focus on one or two that you like to do and stick with those.
I completely agree about just picking one. And then once you've mastered it, you can move on to others.
Yep.
So last question. What's the most influential book that you've read?
Oh, there's been so many books. I think Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, I think has been a great book for me. I mean, if you read it and you sit down, you really digest the book and you read it again, you're like, wow, all these gurus out there today are really ripping him off, basically. I mean, whether it's Tony Robbins, they're all using his stuff. I mean, they've refined it, but his book written like 80 or 90 years ago, it's freaking amazing. I mean, they're talking about all those principles on getting rich and the subconscious mind. That really was an awesome book for me. I loved it. I haven't read it in about 2 years, so I should go back and read it again. It's written differently than what we were expected reading to nowadays, but I still love the book. I think it's a great book.
Yeah, it's one of those books that you should definitely read every year. At least that's what I've been told.
Yep.
Oh, so you haven't read it?
No, I've read it. It's just I haven't read it every year.
Audible. Use Audible. Definitely.
Yeah, especially for that book. Well, Gino, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials and Multifamily podcast. What would be the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
John, I think the best way to get in touch with us is just go to jakeandgino.com/honeybee. You'll go on the Honeybee page. You'll see the resources for the book. You'll see our 4 podcasts down below. You want to ask us some questions. You want to mentor with us, invest with us. You want to get Rain Capital. All the information is on that page. And if you just want to shoot me an email, my email is gino@jakeandgino.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Gino.
Guys, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Gino.
Thank you for listening to the Millennials in Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and a written review at iTunes so that we can connect with more people. Finally, head on over to kronosinvestmentpartners.com and sign up for our newsletter so you can stay updated on everything we're doing. If you're interested in partnering with us as we find new opportunities, you can also schedule a phone call with us under the Contact Us tab at kronosinvestmentpartners.com.